Good morning, students. Looking into the chapter of three orders, so let's start here. The three orders. French priests believed in the concept that people were members of one of the three orders. Depending on their work, a bishop stated that here below some pray, others fight, still others work. Thus, the three orders of society were broadly the clergy, the nobility, and the peasantry. So, uh, this is then let's look into the box. This is something which is very important here. In the 12th century, and this essentially gives you an idea about the shape that the society was taking and what led to thinking. What were the decision makers within the society thinking when this kind of shape was being given to the European society. So let's look into it. In the 12th century, Abe Haldigrad of Benin wrote, "Who would think of herding his entire cattle in one stable? Cows, donkeys, sheep, goats without difference." Students, this is essentially in India, we have the Varna system, right? Where you have, even during, Varna system, where does the Varna system come from? That is the reason why it is so difficult to get rid of this Varna system. A lot of social reformers come to India and they talk about the eradication of Varna system and the equality of human beings and why it is so important that we live as brothers and then we intermingle among ourselves and all that fancy talk is, yes, nice, it's good to hear, but then ultimately no one has been able to do anything about it because of one very important reason, because it gets its sanction, it gets its sanctity from the earliest books that is available to the Sanatan geography or the Sanatan Dharma, and which is not just in Sanatan Dharma, but Rig Veda is considered to be the oldest book or the text of this planet. Okay, and Rig Veda mentions thousands of years ago that the society would have to be divided among the four categories of people, which we all know now is Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, right? And now that is why we have never been able to get rid of this Varna system. Brahmins are always there, the warrior class again, Kshatriyas, the people who get into the paperwork, again, the Vaishyas in the business and all of that, and then we have the Shudras. So we have never been able to kind of do much about it. We do play around it, but yes, no one has been able to penetrate the nucleus of it. Yes, we as electrons, we keep revolving and rotating and do all that fancy stuff, but the nucleus remains intact. In the Western society, they also had, though of course not in the form of Vedas or some religious text, but they're social reformers and they're great brains, they're great philosophers. They even they were talking about it, that why it was important that the people were segregated, that why it was important that every human being was not treated equally when it came to their qualities and their quality of life and their intellect and their skills. And so even their decision makers, right, even as you see 12th century. Now students, let me tell you one important thing. Abe Hildegard, she was a woman. This is not a man talking. Okay, we usually think that women to be more sensitive and to be more more caring about giving equal rights to people, and men being more kind of parochial and more self-centered and selfish, and probably in a Hitler Mussolini mode. But you have to understand that Abe Hildegard was a woman, and she's the one who is saying that who would think of herding his entire cattle in one stable, cows, donkeys, sheep, goats without difference. Therefore, it is necessary to establish the difference among human beings so that they do not destroy each other. God makes distinctions among his flock in heaven as on earth. All are loved by him, yet there is no equality among them. So, the same sentiments being spoken in different languages. I'm sure she must have written all this in German, which we have now translated here in English, and similar things have always been said by even the Indian social thinkers. from not just 12th century but for thousands of years, that yes, there would have to be distinction among different people, because different people have different qualities. They might be just having same limbs, and of course the physiology remains same and constant, but then yes, that doesn't make them same at all. Which, if you look at it, yes, it is very, very debatable. But then, yes, guys, it is obvious that I also have, and you also have the same limbs and head and torso and feet, whatever it is. But probably I would never, not even in my dreams, would be able to run like Usain Bolt. In spite of whatever training I undergo, I would never be able to become an athlete like him, right? So that is what it is. So different people, that what is being talked about, different people have different capabilities, and different people have different talents, and that is what this yeah, Abe Hildegard was saying, that yes, everyone is different. We cannot put them under the same category thinking that yes, all are same and all are same. So the second order is the nobility. Priests placed themselves in the first order and the nobles in the second. The nobility had in reality a central role in social processes. This is because they controlled land. This control was the outcome of a practice called vassalage. Now, who is a vassal, guys? A person in a subordinate position to another is a very simplistic form of saying this. But in during this point in time, 11th and 12th and 13th century, vassalage, as I mentioned in my previous video, that students, you have to understand at that point in time, 90% of the economic activity and the social activity revolved and rotated around agriculture. So naturally, the people who had the control over the maximum amount of land would be the people who would have the most amount of wealth and would have the maximum amount of privilege and power over the people, because people wouldn't, there were no industries, there was nothing in 12th century. No one was manufacturing computers and cell phones, guys, right? So everything was around agriculture, and so naturally the most important resource was the animals, the land, and the, and the aristocracy, or the nobles, who used to control all of that, would naturally be the supreme powers, and anyone who was working for them and under them, they would be the vassals. The kings of France were linked to the people by vassalage, and similar to the practice among the Germanic people, of whom the Franks were one. The big landowners, the nobles, were vassals of the king, and peasants were vassals of the landowners. A nobleman accepted the king as his senior, and they made a mutual promise. The lord was derived from a word meaning one who provided bread would protect the vassal, who would be loyal to him. This relationship involved elaborate rituals which exchange of vows taken on the Bible in the church. At this ceremony, the vassal received a written charter or a staff or even a clod of earth as a symbol of the land that was being given to him by his master. So you can see that there was a whole elaborate ritual that gave sanctity to this arrangement. The noble enjoyed a privileged status. He had absolute control over his property in perpetuity. Now, in perpetuity, what do you mean by this word in perpetuity? In perpetuity essentially is about being forever, something that is always there. And he could raise troops called feudal levies. The lord held his own courts of justice and could even coin his own currency. Now, this is not an arrangement, students, again, which was unique to European society. This was the arrangement which was there even in Asia in one form or the other, whereby there was a king. Of course, there was a king, but he would not be participating in the day-to-day affairs of his kingdom, right? So he would give different provinces and different lands to different categories of people, to different nobles, or to different rajas, or to the zamindars. But then he would. Do you think Chandragupta Maurya, who was ruling India at that point in time, and right from there was no Pakistan at that point in time. So today's Pakistan, most of Afghanistan, the whole of North India, everything was under Chandragupta Maurya. But do you think that he was actually going around and defeating kings from this geography to another? No, he was just sitting in Patliputra, which was his capital, right? And the other kings used to come and pay their homage, and then Chandragupta Maurya was the ruler of whole India, because other kings knew that he was the most powerful person on the land, and it is better that they pay obedience to him. So that is how it was. The arrangement was, and if a foreign invader would ever attack India, then Chandragupta Maurya or Ashoka and all those great mighty kings of India, they would ask their the rajas, which who were there in different provinces of India, to contribute resources, whether it was in terms of food grains, whether it was in terms of soldiers, in terms of gold. Everything was, and ultimately they would be fighting against a foreign invader as a united thing, as a united India. So that is how the arrangement in different societies were at whether it was in Europe, whether it was in China, whether it was in India. That is what the arrangement was. So he was the lord of, and naturally the kings used to give a great amount of autonomy to these nobles and these aristocrats or these local rajas. They would not be participating in the day-to-day affairs at all. Okay, they would have a huge amount of privilege that was and autonomy that was given. It was very in the special cases where the matter would actually go to the king. Let's say it was Ashoka or Akbar the Great, or Jahangir or Shah Jahan, or whatever these rulers were, right? It was only in that certain matters which needed only the attention of, or which could have been, where the call could have been taken only by the great ruler. Only those matters would be escalated to him. Otherwise, all of that would be handled at the local level. And that local level could be presided over by whether the local Raja or the Zamindar, or in the European society, the noble or the aristocrat. That's how it was. You would not be expecting King Louis XIV to be worried about, that is the King of France, to be worried about on trivial matters. No, he would delegate all that responsibility to the local nobles and the aristocrats. Right? Only the special issues would be escalated to him. Otherwise, otherwise rest of it would be completely sorted out at the local level. He was the lord of, and naturally, so these people were very important, very influential, and they would have, because they had all the vassals and the peasants, all of them were directly working for him. It was only that these nobles were responsible to the ruler. But you have to understand that the thousands of people, they had no access to the king or the queen. The only person they knew was the local noble or the local aristocrat or the local raja, right? They did not know who Emperor Ashoka was, or Chandragupta Maurya was, or Louis the 14th was. Okay, so it was the same in all the societies too. It's not just, it was particularly confined to the European society. Okay, thank you.